Dragging unconstrained geometry. Finding unconstrained geometry in a sketch. Copying a sketch geometry within a sketch. This is what I like to demonstrate on this video. So let's begin by using this as an example. It's a belt drive sketch. I'm going to select format, select layer settings, and I'm going to toggle off layer number 1. I'm going to toggle off layer number 10 as well. And I'm going to double click on this sketch so I can activate the sketch. It will put me in the sketch mode. And I'm going to slide the sketch to the right hand side for a second. And by selecting the line icon, and I'm going to create a line, and I will be creating an arc here of any radius. So what I'm going to demonstrate is by just simply selecting MB1, mouse button number 1, I'm going to drag this curve around the screen, as you can see how it moves. And I will select this particular arc and move it around the screen as well. We realize that this geometry moves, and the reason why it moves is because it doesn't have constraints. It doesn't have no intelligence right now, so it can be moved around. I can stretch the length of the line in one end. I can change the angle of that line if I wish. And I can grab the other end and do the same thing. I can apply a geometrical constraint this time. I'm going to put a vertical constraint. As you can see now, there is a symbol here that indicates that there is a geometrical constraint of vertical condition. And again, with MB1, I would be moving this line and stretching it out on both ends. But what I cannot do now is change the angle. So over here, I'm going to put a radial dimension for this particular arc. So I have a diameter, and now I'm going to move the geometry, and as you can see here, it changed from a complete arc to a partial arc. And I can grab one of the ends and I drag it around still, but the diameter cannot be modified because it's controlled already. So pretty much this is all I'm going to demonstrate for dragging curves, unconstrained curves. I'm going to take these curves and I'm going to delete them. Sometimes curves are not selectable well enough because I'm going too fast. But I delete the curves. Now let's move to the sketch that I have originally created for you guys here. So we have two constraints. Most typically, those two constraints are positional constraints that need to apply to the sketch. So if I move around the sketch by selecting MB1, trying to place it in different locations on the screen, notice how the sketch moves with all the dimensions, and of course some of them needs to be adjusted accordingly. Notice I still had two constraints to go. So these are linear dimensions or linear constraints. One of them is a horizontal, and if I select the center point and I select the center of the axis and apply a value of 0, that gives me a constraint to go, and I'm going to toggle here to vertical and do the same thing in the vertical direction. I'm going to apply a value of 0 and close it. Let's rearrange this dimension slightly. And notice that the sketch is fully constrained. So if I toggle and try to drag this sketch now, the sketch doesn't move because it's fully constrained. Notice that. the dimensions moved. I can reposition the dimensions. If I box it in one more time again, everything is highlighted, but notice that some of the dimensions are not. And I select Control MB1 and I drag it around. Notice how everything goes. And I let it go here. Notice that it's Control MB1 is the trick. It copies the sketch. But notice how I'm missing a few dimensions here because I was not careful enough. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to try to be more careful this time by selecting all the geometry. Okay, now I got all the dimensions. I'm going to select Control MB1, drag it around and let it go. And notice how it duplicates the sketch. I can rearrange my dimensions accordingly. And I can change some of these values independently from each other. So I'm going to change this to the value of 65, this angle, and adjust it. Take this and move it around here slightly. Notice that I had 2 constraints to go because I copy it. And definitely these are positional constraints, so vertical in one direction. And I'm going to select the 2 points and make that a value of 0. I have 1 constraint to go. I'm going to toggle it to horizontal. And this time I'm not going to use a value of 0. I'm just going to specify a distance. And let's see, we can enter the value of 85 and close. Notice the sketch is fully constrained. Rearrange my dimensions. I'm going to change this value to a 35. And I have pretty much one sketch copied within the same sketch. Notice one thing. For example, this P29 expression and this P29 apostrophe expression is something that we want to notice, that there is an apostrophe here, and that indicates that there is actually a copy, a sketch. Okay, we have a sketch fully constrained. We're going to finish this, get out of the sketch mode. We're going to go to Format Layer, Settings, Toggle All Layer number 1. And notice how we have an extrusion here from that I have previously created for you. And one thing that I want to point out is that if this toggle, the selection mode is to future curves, it's not going to work. We got to be careful enough to toggle it to single curves. Future curves is going to select the entire sketch. So we need to select the individual curves. -2, +2 in either direction. We're going to toggle this to not single-sided but two-sided. And leave a value of 0.5 and hit OK. We just do a fit here. I want to point it out here that this particular sketch is a single sketch and is in one single plane. You just got to remember that so you can modify it accordingly. So pretty much what we have learned here is dragging unconstrained geometry. We basically learn how to move and finding or pretty much identifying unconstrained geometry on a sketch. And finally, copying a sketch geometry within the same sketch. This pretty much concludes this presentation. What I would like to invite you to watch my next video on how to copy a sketch on another plane. Thank you for watching.